All right, are we ready to go? It's just shy of 7 according to the screen there, but are we ready to go?
We are ready.
All righty. Welcome everybody to the City of Tumwater's Planning Commission meeting for Tuesday, May 28th, 2024 at 7 p.m. and our meeting is called to order. I'll start with roll call. Commissioner Edwards is excused. Commissioner Kirkpatrick?
Here.
Commissioner Staff?
Here.
Commissioner Tobias?
Here.
Commissioner Varela is excused, and me, Commissioner Robbins. We have a quorum, and we can get going. Any changes to our agenda tonight?
No.
Any from anybody? Very good. Let's go to approval of minutes from May 24th. Remarks, revisions?
Wait, May 20, you mean May 14th?
What did I say?
You said May 20. It's like, wait a second, we didn't.
I'm sorry, I apologize. May 14th. Our motion.
I'll have a motion to accept those minutes for May 14th.
All right.
Commissioner Tobias, I'll second that motion.
Great. That was Commissioner Staff with the first motion and Vice Chair Tobias with the second. All right. I'm assuming there's no comments since there weren't any before the motion. All in favor of approving our minutes for May 14th, 2024, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
And any opposed? All right, our minutes are approved. Let's go to commissioners' reports. Anything you all would like to mention? Just seeing shaking heads. Brad, let's go to manager's report.
Tomorrow night is our housing open house in person in the council chambers from 7 until 9 o'clock. There will be an online version that will be available starting tomorrow, probably towards the evening. And it will be active until the 18th to the 16th of June. So we encourage you to participate or let others know that it's there. Erica, did you want to?
Yeah, and we also have a housing survey that is open as well. I do believe it was posted online. Last I looked, we had about 22 respondents to the survey.
Good. All right, anything else?
That's all we can handle at the moment.
Okay. All right, let's go to public comment. Do you have anybody online? Ms. Tousley, if you'd like to address the Planning Commission, would you please state your name and any affiliation?
Can you hear me all right?
Go ahead.
Oh, great.
Yes.
Good evening, Madam Chair and Commissioners. My name is Amy Tousley. I'm a local municipal manager with Puget Sound Energy. They're out of the Olympia offices on Pacific Avenue. Attended the last meeting. We're definitely interested in working with the city on the comp plan update, and land use is of particular interest to us because it relates to energy planning, energy resources, when you talk about types of land use and load and those kind of things. So looking forward to hearing your discussion.
Great, thank you. And thank you for taking the time to come tonight.
You bet.
Brad, did you hear from anybody
No,
else?
Oh,
Uh-oh. No, she's still there.
No, she's not. I just kicked her off. Okay. We will be talking to Amy tomorrow. Anyway.
She can rejoin, right?
She can.
Okay.
But we do have a conversation on lands for public purposes that we'll have with her
Oh, okay.
and utilities.
Okay.
I can send her a quick email.
That'd be great if you wouldn't mind just shooting her, you know, please rejoin. We
Please rejoin.
hit the wrong button.
We swear we didn't kick you off on purpose.
We're saving that for later. We're not doing that now.
It's the ejector button.
Would anyone like to make public comment? Yeet.
Oh my gosh.
While you're doing that, did you hear from anybody else in the meantime about it?
No.
Okay.
Otherwise, we would have,
now.
we would have had a lot more. No, we did not receive any public comment.
Okay. That's fine. All right, well, hopefully Ms. Towsley will rejoin us shortly after Erica's got a message to her. Let's move on then to our eighth order of business, the comp plan periodic update element on land use for discussion.
So part of discussion tonight, we're focusing again on policies. And this time we're going to be focusing on the land use policies in the land use element. In terms of schedule for updating the rest of the land use element, we're pretty close in schedule to the housing element. We had a discussion last week with Michael Ambrosi with the Thurston Regional Planning Council about the land capacity analysis. He's hoping to have some preliminary numbers by the end of next month. So I think we'll be on track for getting into the full depth of the discussion come the fall. Because we'll need to take his numbers and do a lot of work to sort of do all the background work. But we thought it would be good to at least get the policies out in front so we can start thinking about that. So again, similar to what we did with the conservation element 2 weeks ago, this is sort of an introductory what we have and what we're starting to make adjustments to. If you've had any comments or questions on anything, we'll make note of it and go from there.
Just real quickly, is the person you referred to, is that their modeler, like a?
He is the numbers guy.
Okay, yeah, okay.
Yeah, he and Allison Osterberg are the two people we've been working closely with on the housing allocation process. And then also he's the next person in line for the land capacity.
Thanks. Okay, good.
Again, we've broken the goals down into larger categories. The first is the set of goals that relate to growth management. They're fairly broad in nature. That's why we sort of lump them together. How we do this and what's the best way to present this information, we're still really in the process of trying to figure this out. This is just our first run at some of the stuff. And the run here is primarily to get rid of duplicative policies and or move policies to more appropriate elements where we could. We're also trying to identify actions, implementation actions that tie directly into the policies. The idea being that we don't have very many policies that don't have in some form an implementation action. So in some cases, the policy itself is just, it's just some of the ongoing thing that is just going to have to be the way it is, just to meet the checkbox on the state stuff. But so what we have developed so far really hasn't brought in the full level of implementation stuff. Elizabeth, at the last meeting, you brought up a good evaluation that we have not done yet in terms of what is working, what needs to be improved, what's the cost for it, and all those kinds of things. So as part of this development, our intent is to bring that information.
Great. I think that'll be helpful for us.
Yeah. So any questions or anything from your review of the documents? I know Elizabeth read the entire packet. I know Brandon read most of the packet. Harry, I'm not going to speak for you, thankfully. So. You're on mute, Terry.
Yeah, I've got it online and I can organize it to read. What I got in the packet was not readable. And when I tried to print out when I tried to print out what you sent me, I got something similar to what was in the packet. So it's sort of beyond my tech knowledge to figure out how to get this to fit on a piece of standard paper.
Okay. Terry, do you want me to leave a copy of the 11 by 17 on the front counter for you to pick up?
Well, that would be fun. Sure.
Okay. And if anybody else would like that as well.
Like one of those,
Okay.
because I'm on little bitty fonts on my paw.
We will add that to the list of things.
It would be helpful.
People who don't have personal printers that allow for 11 by 17, I didn't think about that. Okay. Any initial questions or thoughts based on the material you've been able to take a look at?
So recently, in the most recent state legislature, there was legislation proposed to allow for, I can't remember the exact stipulations, but cafes in single family, I remember it was multifamily medium or single family medium, or single family housing zoned areas. I'm wondering if, does Tumwater have anything like that allowable for, or is that more handled by our allocation of like neighborhood commercial spaces adjacent to multifamily and single family housing? I'm thinking Barnes Hill is a good example, because you've got the office park there that has, a number of businesses and amenities that people in the local neighborhood can access. But that's not, that space is specifically, commercially zoned. It's not, single family with allowed use for that. Do we have anything like that in the long-term plan for Tumwater?
Is this in relation to the discussions Olympia had been having about potentially allowing commercial outside of just their neighborhood commercial nodes? Because they had done a 2-year review of their stuff that just finished.
Oh, they have to? Okay. I thought.
And I wasn't.
I'm conflating the state with the.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if the state gave us that requirement this time.
No, not a requirement, but just like to allow for
A
it.
polite suggestion?
Yeah, or just like legislation to allow for, like neighborhood commercial in single family and multifamily medium, zoned areas, or like certain types of businesses. Like I said, I think they called it like the cafe,
Right.
bill, or,
Mhm.
because the idea that like you could be living in a, neighborhood full of single family or multifamily housing, and then walk down the road to, a local coffee shop that is technically outside of the like commercially zoned area, but still.
So I apologize, Terry. I'm bringing up the municipal code right now that you can't see. But I'll describe it to you once I get it up. I think we currently allow, and this is our permitted uses for single family. We have this strange conditional use, neighborhood-oriented commercial center that we currently allow.
Really vague.
Yep. The problem is, I think, number one, no one's ever, that I'm aware of, has ever taken advantage of that. And I also have a suspicion that it's a very limiting thing. No more than 3 commercial land uses on one lot, and only retail service to serve residents in the immediate neighborhood and designed to operate at a minimized impact. Actually, that's fairly broad. But we do allow that.
Yeah.
Already, and we do this in similar zones already, but I am not aware of anyone who's ever come across with a proposal to do that within a residentially zoned neighborhood. Again, this is single family, so this is the biggest and largest zone we've got.
Yeah.
And I imagine part of that could also be, people that like say run a business out of their home, like.
That's home occupation, and
Oh,
that's a different animal entirely.
Oh, okay. That's what I get
And
for.
that's an accessory use that we allow.
So what you're saying is Tumwater like theoretically could allow that, but.
Well, it's not even theoretical. They
It's
do.
Yeah, we do
allowed.
allow it, but we just.
But if it's not used, if you're, like, I can imagine a couple of places around town, but I think they're all Olympia technically, or actually.
Potentially.
And, like the Briggs, that new Briggs sort of development with the ice cream and the.
Yep,
chat room
And that's actually within a
I think that's Olympia.
master plan community.
Yeah. And there's another one, up there on Capitol, where the little Spuds Market.
Oh, yeah,
And the
place.
pizza.
Yeah, the pizza
couple other
place that
things.
we keep trying to.
But in that case, I think there's like more than 3 business entities there. So I don't want,
Is
what
that
I'm,
commercial or residential?
Well, it's right at the end of a commercial area, or excuse me, a residential area, but, and I don't know whether the lot where those businesses are is somehow, you know,
Mhm.
I don't know the particulars, but it's right smack adjacent to a residential area. But what I'm wondering about is the having just 3 businesses be part of a commercial center adequate? Is there a reason why somebody hasn't found that to be a useful part of what's allowed within the city of Tumwater? And is that part of the reason? Do they need to make it pencil out, do they need to have more than 3, or I don't know what, you know, what's the reasoning behind, or do you know
No,
what's going on, why we can't, why nobody has found it profitable to do that kind of?
it has been, I'd have to go back to see, my guess is it's probably been there since at least the 90s.
Yeah, yeah, and if it's not being used pretty much anywhere, then you gotta
You
wonder.
had something,
Yeah.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, I think of, like, little quick stops, like JJ's
Yeah.
Corner Store,
Yeah.
you know, by Black Lake,
Right,
or
right.
over by the Olympia High School, they have that little grocery
That
within
Pit
that.
Stop or whatever it's called.
Yeah, the huge
and
residential area.
those are neighborhood commercial
Yeah,
in the city,
within the city.
including the one that you're.
Those are not considered the commercial center, they're just simply,
They're the lowest intensity of the commercial uses
yeah,
within the city.
they're like a single entity on a whatever size parcel. Yeah, but not like a center with 3 businesses.
Yeah, nothing that, like what's described as, that's already residentially zoned and developed that way.
I think it's all private market driven though, so the developer would have to come in to
Yeah.
want to buy that
Right.
property, whereas I feel like developers, when they have parcels that they are developing, they wanna build either residential
Right.
or commercial. It's not like usually a mix.
Yeah,
Well, the cost for residential is probably higher than the commercial property.
Like turnover.
Yeah. So like if you're gonna buy a piece of commercial land at the same size as residential land, it's probably more expensive to buy the residential. So why turn it into something? Just my thought, possibly, why people think that.
Easier to
I
convert,
Put a house on it and sell the
Yeah.
house.
convert a commercial property to another commercial property, then convert a residential one to a commercial property. I
yeah.
guess, you know, there's a
And
lot
take
of
risk, because you're in residential, there's nothing else there.
Right.
But thank you
A lot of
for,
reasons.
clarifying the municipal code. It was hiding in front of my site the whole time, that,
No,
Yeah, we do
it's
have-
one of those things I stumble across every so often, so why do we have those?
so we can do it, we just
That
don't,
is
we
an
just haven't
interesting
yet.
question.
Good to know.
The market hasn't responded.
Well, I mean, there is that other little Spud's place out by the airport where there's 3 or 4 businesses in there too. I don't remember what they all are, but there's not a whole lot of residential right there handy. I mean, you gotta go another.
And that's probably commercial,
Yeah, that's commercial right there.
so that's all zoned properly.
Right, right.
So maybe people just don't know that they could do
Yeah.
this in a residential area, maybe it's an
Right.
unknown hidden gem.
Right.
Now, it sort of just came to mind because I was thinking the other day, I was at that, the bar and grill at, on Barnes Hill, and thinking, you know, there's so many people from the neighborhood, they can just like walk here,
Mhm.
they can eat, they can drink, and if they've had a few too many beers, they just walk home. So there's like a safety aspect there of, you know, okay, are you reducing, by having, you know, commercially available outlets for things that you're looking for nearby, you can actually, you know, increase safety on the roads, for example.
Right.
Friendly neighborhood bar.
Where everybody knows your name, yeah.
Yep, there you go.
Well, there was that property up there, if I'm thinking of the right place, I don't remember the name of the people, but we heard about it a couple years ago, up there on the hill, that was, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was, they came in for a variance or a rezone or something, it had been commercial, and they
Oh,
wanted.
the
Yeah,
Abbey Gable?
That's it, yeah. And something didn't pencil out over a long, many year, and,
It's bedrock,
yeah,
again, always
yeah.
expensive.
They couldn't develop it much of any way, but otherwise it was zoned commercial, but they wanted to back out and do something else with it.
Good luck.
We made some changes so they could do,
Yeah, yeah.
we've seen some proposals, but I'm not aware of a current active permit for those properties. Yeah.
It would be interesting to see if that's something to, you know, encourage, because I mean, one of the things about the tour we did was exactly that kind of a thing, you know, all this residential going in, but what, you know, what if people wanted just a little grocery store to stop in, or, you know, a place to go grab a bite to eat,
Mhm.
you know, and walk home. That kind of thing would, you know, build that community.
Mhm. So the first section, we did a lot of combining. There's a lot of coordinate with multiple different kinds of plans, both within the city and zoning code, economic development, all these kinds of things. We tried to simplify this with all of our adopted city plans and regulations, just to get rid of some of the verbiage. And we did a similar thing with the implementation measures. Now, these, excuse me, are going to be changing and will be added to and so forth, but I think, you know, this is kind of going in probably the best direction for that. We also have a similar coordinate with the regional plans and the plans of the neighboring jurisdictions in our special districts, like the school district and the lot and so forth. So we try to, and also obviously the airport master plan and those kinds of things. So we're trying to capture those things. So as you can tell, this is a fairly high level. There was a goal about engaging in planning on a neighborhood level, which I think is still very valid. I'm not necessarily convinced that we should try to keep the neighborhood appendix. That is by far the biggest chunk of the paper that Elizabeth has. Just because, number one, it's a lot of work to update. And number two, the neighborhoods are sort of arbitrary in the sense that they were sort of divided, and we need to talk about neighborhoods, so we'll just divide the city into neighborhoods, whether it's actually reflective of a neighborhood or not. Like Tumwater Hill, I think, is much bigger than it probably should be. Little Rock is, you know, they're just really big for neighborhoods. And so I'm sure there are parts of that we'd like to take out and keep using, but I'm not sure if I want to keep the individual neighborhood descriptions.
Were the neighborhoods kind of, you know, I don't know, sort of more or less organically formed over time, or were they like a named development kind of a thing, and that sort of
Both, I
became
think.
the,
Yeah, I think the organic part was like Tumwater Hill.
yeah,
That, because that just developed over 100+ years as the old neighborhood. And then everything else was, you know, there wasn't like, we didn't incorporate a village, for example.
yeah.
It was just the attitude development as we went along. And people tend to associate more with their homeowner association neighborhoods
Yeah,
rather than, you know,
Yeah.
this broader, I live in the Trosper district, or, you know, that kind of thing.
all about the,
Exactly.
What neighborhood you're in.
Right.
yeah.
I mean, is there a reason to not just remove everything? Is there something that we delineate between those neighborhoods in this document or in any document? I mean, are all the neighborhoods the same in that appendix?
In the appendix, we use the same format to describe each one. I'm trying to make sure that Terry can hear me, because I just realized I'm not aiming my voice towards it.
I can hear you.
Thank you. Let me know if you can. The neighborhood element has the similar sections as for all of the elements, pretty much, you know, describing the land uses within each, maybe a little bit of the history. But I'm blanking on it. There's not like special policies.
So there's nothing really unique about each one?
No, we don't call out a special policy or an implementation thing or anything related to that neighborhood.
Yeah. So it makes sense to remove that.
Mhm.
Terry, do you recall from your time on the commission, what the purpose of the neighborhoods was? And is there something we need to be saving as part of that?
Are you addressing that to me?
Yes, sir.
Oh, no, in fact, it was just the other way around. I think it was something staff wanted to do. It didn't come from the planning commission, it came from the staff. And I'm not sure what the source of the idea was.
Yeah, I have a suspicion that Mayor Komet played a role in that. He was very big on using it when I started here. He liked keeping the descriptions, so I'm wondering if that was part of it.
Possibility.
Okay,
Is that something that we would want to draw attention to in public settings, not just this, but in other situations, to ask people,
mhm.
you know, people in those neighborhoods, how they feel?
No, I think that's a very appropriate question.
Like you say, if people really identify with their neighborhood more, maybe that's what, whether it was Mayor Komet or others, thought that was worth it somehow. And I'm wondering, are there other parts of either this element or even an ordinance that talk about doing things at a neighborhood level?
I'm not aware of that they specifically call out, you know, the neighborhoods as they're defined in the land use element.
Yeah.
But, for example, we do have a Little Rock transportation plan
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't necessarily follow the boundaries of the neighborhood that's defined in the land use element. It's its own creature.
Yeah.
There are things like the brewery district, which is, you know, pretty much it's a sub-area plan that covers the same area, those kinds of things where we have that. But I'm not aware of anything else that sort of covers the same area outside of those sub-area plans that we have.
It was an interesting comment we did receive in the community survey about wanting a theme, more themes or characteristics. But I think we could address that through policy 1.4.
And that was kind of the small town feel as well, or?
Yeah, the
Similar.
1.4 is actually the town center, which is this.
There.
Which we have a set of regulations, but I'm not sure if we ever had a separated plan per se for the area. I've never found one. And I'm not necessarily sure in how much energy there is in trying to keep that going. I know, you know, as we get new development in here, we're requiring them to do the streetscape, things like that, and I think all that is probably still appropriate to do. But I think we're a ways off from seeing the ultimate vision of what they wanted to do for that.
And that would be applied, though, kind of broadly speaking, all over. And
Yeah.
there wouldn't be neighborhood-specific.
It would, no, it actually would apply to everything south of Israel, north of Tumwater Boulevard, I-5 to Capitol.
Yeah, okay,
So there was a specific vision that's in the zoning code,
okay.
and a streetscape plan, and that was developed related to that.
Okay.
And I still think, you know, nobody said, let's stop doing it, but at the same time, it's been 25 plus years since
Yeah.
we had it.
So, yeah, so looking at that comment, we don't need a new center because we have one. But we need to
To sort of confirm, is this what we really want?
like sustain it or, you know, build upon it or do the next step.
So that's really a question, I think, for the council and the mayor.
Well, and if you ask, I mean, going back to asking the community, where do they think that the Tumwater City Center is?
Mhm.
And I feel like most people would say, the craft district or the brewery district,
Mhm.
or the city center.
Mhm.
So that language right there, is a little confusing.
You know, I think these would be good public engagement questions,
Mhm.
for both the neighborhood designations and the city center.
Start planning for the next open house.
That's right.
We all heard it, recorded.
No, but I agree. I think that makes the most sense to me. But this is a good way to sort of chase out some of those bigger things that we should talk about. Apologies as I scribble notes here.
Mhm. And maybe that's a good, cross-link with what will undoubtedly be the economic development element of, you know, I'll call it marketing what is the city center and what it, what's available or what it does or any of that kind of stuff.
And we're anticipating that we'll have a new economic development manager here shortly.
Okay,
They
cool.
finished a round of interviews. I'm presuming they're still in discussions, but I'm hoping by next month we'll have somebody on board.
Okay, good.
I don't think they'll be instantly ready to engage on all this stuff, but we'll hold off until the beginning of August. And then-
Yeah.
Along with the city piece of marketing, tourism in Tumwater, how does that tie into the city center and what's our identity and how much is being looked at with the destination master plan that Experience Olympia put on for all of Thurston County? My mind kind of ties back to that and how much of that massive document resource that they put in will be looked at by the city.
Yeah.
I know that's being pulled together right now.
And that question has come up internally about how do we relate it to all that work.
Mhm.
Don't have a brilliant answer yet, but we'll.
Luckily, there's a good data set to pull from.
Yeah.
It'll be available soon.
I think we got an initial email indicating it's coming.
And I can get that to you when available.
I appreciate
Yeah.
it. Gold LU2 is really lengthy, and it sort of captures, it's like, just follow GMA is kind of the summary of what it should say. So we'll be wordsmithing that one, because we actually I increased the length of it. Again, this is more about the developing of higher densities and centers and so forth, and maintaining neighborhoods. Actually, that's actually a good question. What do you mean by maintain? We've had discussions about character and maintaining and so forth. I think that's actually another good open house discussion. So this covers, I think, sort of the anti-sprawl message of the Growth Management Act in the policy format. Related to that is the LU3 ones that deal with public services, making sure that this is where we tie the land use element into the capital facilities element. All the expenditures that we're making, make sure everything's in accordance to our system plans. Connect if there's an issue, system fails for septic and that kind of thing. We have another call into Lot to talk to them about some of these policies and some of the stuff that they have. So we'll hopefully have their input on this shortly. And this is also dealing with water. I think all of this is still very relevant. This one I would like to tweak a little bit further. It basically acknowledges that a lot of the development of the water systems and so forth will be dependent upon private development. And we want to do this so in the most efficient way, not merely for one property owner, but for a neighborhood as it develops. So I'm probably just what I just said. We'll be tweaking that. Any questions on those so far?
On that aspect of public services and facilities, is this where we get into that nexus with essential public facilities? essential public facilities?
That's actually a strange creature on
Yeah.
its own, which is why it sort of sits on its own in terms of its policies.
Okay,
I've added it, in fact, just before the airport policies.
okay,
Because it deals, the essential public facilities are those things that nobody wants but everybody needs.
right.
Whether it's a jail or
Uh-huh.
a university or something that causes lots of impacts to the immediate neighborhood and
Right.
not a lot of benefit necessarily, but everybody needs to have. Because they're very specific uses, like airports, I felt they were sort of their own creature, separate from, say, the broader dealing with transportation or water or sewer issues.
Yeah.
That's why they're
Okay.
in
So-
those sections. But
Is that part of, where is that in this?
they're LU, LU 11 on page 14 of it. In fact, I'll just scroll right there, just so. Sorry, Terry. So these are the new goals.
Yeah,
So providing for a location is the overall goal, ensuring that we don't preclude the siting, that's a state law requirement. Where possible, site them jointly, if there's more than one benefit, we take advantage of that. Basically, we follow the appropriate public process, essentially it's the conditional use permit process for this. And then I think all these criteria are still very relevant for siting new facilities. Being, a proximity to major transportation routes, so you don't put something that needs to be, you don't have to build roads to get there. Compatibility, environmental impacts, those kinds of things are all considered. And then we have our last section, which deals with the regional airport, which I think in my mind is its own creature because it's 500 acres of the city.
yeah.
Something we have to deal with. So that's why I put them at the end, because they're sort of special cases.
So there was another, I can't remember what it was exactly, it was sort of a social services kind of a thing that was deemed to be an essential public facility, and that could be, do you remember what I'm talking about?
Drug treatment facilities and
Yeah.
those kinds of things.
Mental
That was
health.
it. Something like that? So do we need to call that out, or is it just treated within
I would just,
11?
I would treat it within 11.
Yeah.
Because what could happen is the list of essential public facilities could expand
Yeah.
on the state side. In fact, the state RCW, lists, here's what are the essential public
Right,
facilities.
yeah.
And then,
Relatively finite
yeah,
set, yeah.
and then they've also made it clear that jurisdictions that list things that aren't listed in the state lists, like homeless
Mhm.
facilities, don't do that. So my preference is to deal with that in the regulations, not in the policy.
So it's called out by name here, and then you reference that. Okay,
Yeah,
I get that.
yeah.
That's why I was
That's
asking questions, so thank you for that.
Yeah. When we use the phrase essential public facilities, it has a very
Means
well
something
defined
really
meaning
legal.
under state law, so that's why we're using it.
Okay, thank you.
Moving away from sort of the broad general growth management things, we're getting into the more focused community goals. And this is where I put housing, transportation, and open space, because I thought, I didn't want to lose the connections that we needed to have between land use element and these other elements, especially because these are the important ones in my mind. Climate is obviously very important, but it sort of falls in under various ways. But the connection between what we do on the land use side and what kind of housing we have is a direct connection. And the same thing with transportation. So that's why I've included these things here. For first of all, making sure that our land use patterns allow for affordable housing development. And this is where I think once we have land capacity analysis and other things, we could start to show that more when we're doing our mapping.
Mhm.
Because as Erica has been doing a lot of work on sort of relating what we mean when we say affordable, what that actually translates into as a unit, as a potential dwelling unit, is usually on a higher density apartment rather than a single family, as quote unquote as a affordable unit. And that's a different creature and a different density and a different set of requirements than what we currently have for most of the city. So I think we'll be getting into that a little bit more and filling in further once we have more information about how this actually will be playing out. Similar thing with the multimodal transportation stuff and the coordination with the transportation plan. There are enough things here, again, that sort of, on the land use side that really support what we want to do on the transportation side. So I thought all those things would be definitely relevant to keep in there. I think we could tweak them and then expand them further, but this is just the start of what we had. And a similar thing, this deals with critical areas, but it gets at part of the GMA land use requirements that we address open space and critical limitations on land. And I still think this is a good goal to keep, and how we actually do that and how we have implementation measures as part of that. That's, I think, another good discussion topic. Also, there's, excuse me as I keep scrolling. Terry, I apologize for scrolling back and forth so much. Another thing that I didn't really address here that I still think we need to address is the new requirements dealing with designating urban forestry land. We have an open space zone district, but I think that kind of thing is probably appropriate to be thinking about as part of this. So we're encouraged to explicitly call out those areas now, rather than just add them in as part of some of the other things. Next set of goals deal with residential development. This is more specifically traditional land use designation. So we have residential, commercial, and in the old policies, we didn't pull apart commercial and industrial. And in my mind, they're totally separate. One's public facing, one really you don't want mixing because it might get more interesting than you want. But I mean, that's why I pulled them apart and tried to create their own sections. It's also, I think I'm just going to pick a fight with the council on that when I do that. So it's just masochism. But anyway, this is actually, again, talking about specific things related to land supply for residential uses. I still think implementation, things like not permitting private residential gated communities is still an appropriate thing within the city. We can talk about what that looks like, a single family neighborhood versus a multifamily neighborhood, and all that. Healthy access, nearby access to healthy food, I think, is still a good thing to be talking about. So just keeping that in. Commercial, again, number one, making sure that we have an adequate supply of commercial land near transportation corridors, and also that we have a variety of intensities. So everything from the Costco's, Walmart's, Fred Meyer intensity all the way down to the neighborhood centers, I still think is a useful thing. And maybe not assume that just because we designate the land as a lower intensity commercial, that's going to happen instantaneously. I suspect at some point it will, but we just have to be patient.
I actually do have a question. If you go up a little bit, sorry about that. The healthy food.
Yeah.
Can you expand on that? Promote nearby access to healthy food for residential developments. What does that mean to the city?
One of the big emphasis from the council in the past few years has been on urban agriculture and doing what we can to as locally sourced food as much as possible. We've also, we're going to have somebody help us start our food security plan for the city, which is going to be sort of how do we make sure that, that residents and so forth have access to food, number one, and also that it's healthy and it's local food. So there's been a big emphasis on that I think we want to keep as part of this plan. Whether it necessarily belongs best here, or if there's another way of doing this, that's, I think we're open to that, because if you recall in the conservation element, we do have a section dealing with urban agriculture. But how we want to do that and maybe tie it into the land use element, I still think is.
Yeah, I think it can be expanded upon, and to me, it's like, how do we promote businesses to come in to utilize that while not overreaching as the city?
Right.
And is it providing grants or different funds or different spaces or tax allocations or what have you? I guess my mind goes to that in that statement right there.
Yeah.
It's kind of a very broad statement where a lot of what we talk about is, city cannot go and designate this is, how you're gonna build your house, or this is what type of houses, and it's the developer that has to come in. With that, it's almost like, are we just stating this and waiting for people? But it's good to hear what you just said.
Yeah, and it's trying to capture a lot of different things, because there's also the informal food distribution, you know, like during the summer, you'll see food stands along the road, basically that I've got extra produce. And you pull off to the side of the road and, you know, put a little money into the kitty and take your bundle.
And do businesses and people know that that's encouraged?
Yeah,
Okay.
or why would the city really care? I mean, the only thing that we should be concerned about is impacts to the neighbors. You know, is it getting too many cars in there? Is it, you know, creating a safety issue or those kinds of things? If it's not, then why should we really, you know, take an active role in regulating?
Because one of the things I think about is when I read that, where are healthy food options? And I'm thinking, okay, there's a Burger King, there's a McDonald's, there's like all the things that are right on Capitol that you have everywhere. Then I'm trying to think, okay, where are the super healthy options? And it just kind of doesn't connect very well. So that's where my mind was going. It's more healthy food options where you can go and get a bite to eat, or a local store that you can go to, or a co-op or something.
Yeah.
I think it's,
So, yeah, then that's actually, go ahead, Terry, I'm sorry.
I think Spuds fits into that category.
I agree with Spuds.
Well, we got two Spuds, you know,
Good call out.
yeah, two of them in Tumwater, and they're right near residential developments. And
Well, the one
I'd
on the
help
north end of Capitol, it, as an Olympia resident, Tumwater hasn't seized that one yet, but, the co-op and those kinds of things, I think are something, definitely something I'd like to see more. Michael?
I think part of the, adding that to the strategic, or the land use plan is, you know, to avoid the development of food deserts. I don't know if you're familiar with that concept, but the idea that like you could go to a certain neighborhood or a certain area that just does not have services, or only has, like, say, a mini mart that doesn't have fresh produce, doesn't have things. So I think that's sort of why, I mean, that would be my guess, is why we put that in as part of the land use, is because you want, you know, there's a lot of data that correlates, you know, that there's correlation between, you know, living in a food desert and having a lot of, like, other negative economic and social aspects, you know.
Yeah.
So I think that makes sense why it's there. Just to say, we want to have more development of food spaces for our neighbors, but we also don't want it to just be, you know, a 7-Eleven on every corner. We want to have options. No offense to 7-Eleven, you know, I don't think Slurpee as much as the next guy.
This one to me also really, kind of mostly, maybe it's mostly because of the urban agriculture kind of angle, is, it would be, I don't know if you've already done this or not, but reach out to the Thurston Conservation District, which is really trying to, I guess, promote use of and conservation of those kinds of lands that are growing food and probably, you know, a little bit of timber too, but mostly, you know, kind of at the food level. And I know that there's probably also, you know, where maybe spontaneous farmers markets or more stable ones. And also the little, you know, community gardens and so on that are out there. That would be it seems to be that's part of the mix here.
Yeah, and I think things like pea patches and those kinds of
Yeah,
things
that was,
fit well within the urban fabric.
right.
The larger scale, probably not, and if it is, you know, something that they want to keep and so forth, it probably should be in the city to begin with.
Right. And if it's local, I mean, you know, you shouldn't have, like what you were saying earlier about why would the city get involved, and if it's more localized and it's in this residential area where people have, you know, you don't even have to drive to go, you know, a block over to check out your neighbor's produce stand or, and, yeah, there should be no trouble with that.
That was under the commercial policies, right?
Under the residential.
That was under residential?
Currently.
Okay.
Does there need to be some mention on the commercial side if
You
it's
know,
more?
that's actually a good question. Or,
It's your
Yeah.
islands, commercial district, deserts. It should almost just be expanded to all those different categories, so it's.
Unless, I mean, you know, I can envision situations where it would just not be appropriate at all to have food in the vicinity of some kind of certain kinds of commercial activities. But, you know, in other ways, it's, you know, it's all part of it.
and I think we started to do that in the commercial with the food trucks and the food truck courts as more of a
Mhm.
local option kind of things, but we
Yeah.
can expand on that.
Actually, on that note, so with food trucks, are there any rules in the Tumwater Municipal Code and or the state law about if you have, because I know that if you have a restaurant, you also have to offer restroom facilities, you know, but if you're a truck, obviously, it's not always as feasible. So if we make food truck if we made, you know, food courts that were made of food trucks, does that also mean we would have to provide restroom facilities?
Yeah, that's actually a good question, because it's been a while since we've worked on that code. And there's no requirement on the state level necessarily that we do that. But if we're gonna do larger scale food courts, that's probably something we wanna consider.
Yeah, or nearby a park with those facilities.
Yeah.
The one over in Lacey, I think there's restrooms there.
Yeah.
Use.
And they specifically developed that, so,
Yeah.
you know, on the broader, this is a food court kind of level, but the one I'm familiar with also in Olympia, on Plum and State doesn't have any facilities.
They have the Whitewood
Yeah,
site.
there is. There's a little restroom there in that
There
old
is.
derelict kind of gas station thing.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yes, it's there.
It's, yeah, I would be generous to call it a half bath. It's a quarter bath. It's a tight fit, but it does
It's
meet the code.
modest.
Okay, well, I don't recall what our code says, and I don't think we actually addressed that. We wrote the food court code. This is the manufacturing, industrial, and warehouse section that deals with everything. This is also one that I think we're gonna need to have some good discussions with our economic development person.
Question.
Yes.
Actually, on that note, whatever happened with the Panettone or Panettone,
Still there,
is that still being developed or is it already built?
still being developed, waiting on the habitat conservation plan.
Okay, because that's I know that's under the port's purview from what they do with the land, but that's still located.
Yeah, it's still up to us to permit whatever Panettone decides to do.
Okay.
So they lease the land from the port, but land use approvals are through the city. Open space trails and recreational facilities, this is the tie-in to the Parks and Rec plan. And also, the conservation lands, this is more dealing with environmentally sensitive lands here.
In this section, I think there may be some stronger stronger language, not just merely to retain those open space parks, trails, and so on, but to actively go and get some set aside and keep them viable. And in particular, one of the things that I'm like especially interested in is because where I happen to live, and it's proximity but difficulty of access to the craft district. As a crow flies, but I'm not a crow. It's very short, you know. So, yeah. So getting those trails, getting those walkways to, you know, whether it's to a commercial center like that, or maybe that's the wrong term, but getting to a place like that, or to a farm stand or a nature opportunity or whatever it is, those trails, those walkways, bike paths, so on, I think are really a key component to the whole community building.
Kind of like agro-tourism, but for the community as well. It's not just agro-tourism, it's agro-community.
Yeah,
Being able to go and
correct.
experience.
Yeah, within the community.
Yeah.
Yeah, go find out about your community. You know, look what
Because that's a big driver in the tourism
Yeah.
marketing is go visit different farms, different farm stands, different co-ops, go experience it through their eyes.
Right.
And that's really exciting, and as residents.
And it's one thing to do, you know, you know, a vineyard crawl through a whole region, but if you know, within your neighborhood or within an easy walking radius of your home, what can you go explore?
Yeah. And I think that also brings in the pedestrian and bicycle connections between neighborhoods. When you're doing new subdivisions and so forth, allowing for those connections. It doesn't have to be a roadway.
Yeah, correct. It could be a narrow little path. There are some curious little walkways, little paths here and there. And it'd be lovely if those were, you know, I presume that they're extremely informal.
I'm thinking in the city of Olympia, there were some that were designated as part of the subdivision. That
Yeah.
You need a connection here.
Could be,
It doesn't
and
have to be a road.
it's not much. It's just like a little path that, you know, you walk at
Half
your
the
own
thing.
peril and just with muddy boots. Yeah.
Yep.
But, you know, but they're there. So things like that are, you know, could be, you know, safe and direct access to all these things within our town.
Yeah, I feel like I see those in older subdivisions constantly, and very few and seldom in newer,
Yeah,
especially homeowners associations
right,
developing those.
right.
Or my family lives in Gig Harbor, and there's a community that has one, but they don't want it. And so they try to limit access to it as much
Yeah.
as possible.
Yeah,
That's an interesting piece.
it's
right
an
there.
interesting conundrum,
But that's also a gated community, so.
Yeah, that's a different.
Yeah, different ballgame right there.
Yeah.
And then we talked about the essential public facilities, and then also, but finally, the port. There are some specific things about not, you know, certain land uses, tall buildings, not next to the runway kind of thing, are all important parts of that. Were there any questions that you had on what you've seen, or things that you sort of expected to see but didn't?
But it's a truly bizarre and out there question, I will admit, but since we do have the regional airport, if you are driving up like 101, there's Skydive Kapowsin over near Shelton. Is there any restriction on a skydiving business from the regional airport, or is that? I don't know if there's any appetite for it.
Excellent question, Erica. Not that I'm aware of, not from the local the city zoning side. I presume there's got to be some restrictions from FAA and a few others about where the appropriate places would be for that. And I'm thinking also balloons and other stuff.
Is
a
it?
lot more land.
You need a bit
bigger.
Yeah, that's
And
probably what it is.
really good parachute.
Right.
Yeah.
I was just thinking that as far as, you know, if you wanted to turn the regional airport into a like more, you know, economically developed, and I'm like, what are things you can do with an airport, you know? Only so many things.
You'd probably get in trouble because of the gophers out there.
That's
Yeah.
true, maybe.
Have them
Yeah.
parachutists land on anywhere but the hard surfaces.
Yeah, that would probably not turn out well, but.
Yeah.
I mean, there are some opportunities with the businesses behind, like the batting cages and stuff. but it would just have to be redevelopment.
Those cages, I think, are being redeveloped now, so, or they're under new management, I don't remember, but they're not currently open.
Yeah, I don't know what the lease status is right now with that, and that's,
Doesn't the governor use that airport? Probably.
I mean, there's like 80 or 90, people waiting for hangar space at that airport then. So that's a huge factor that we're constantly waiting for hangar space.
Popular than I thought, I guess.
Yeah, there's a lot of, on the flight path, there's a lot of activity, but, you know, you could think of, within the gate, you could, because there's a lot of training, you know, there's the flight school, but there's also the small private jets flying in and out, not just state patrol, but, you know, private stuff, a lot of private stuff. There could be, you know, little facilities that serve a hamburger, you know, that wanted.
yeah, and I think those kinds of, I mean, to be honest, the airport-related industry zone allows almost everything,
Yeah,
except for residential.
yeah,
I mean, everything else is open.
right,
What wants to do it or have something.
yeah, yeah, you just have to find a partner like that.
I did have a question on the historical and cultural significance, promote preservation of sites. It doesn't call out indigenous people directly in here. I'm wondering if it calls it out when you dig deeper.
Probably not, but I think that's an appropriate.
Yeah. Speaking of preservation of sites, I mean, directly across from the airport is a historic site as well that gets forgotten about often, so.
Yeah.
The Bush.
The Bush House.
Yeah, so the Bush Prairie Farm and that little historic marker over there.
I definitely think we need to strengthen this.
Because, I mean, Tumwater has so much history for being the first pioneer dock and city. And I mean, a lot of folks think that Olympia is that site, and it really is Tumwater. That's something to be proud of. We did work with the indigenous people back then heavily.
Yeah. No, I think that's a very appropriate thing. So those are the land use actions that stayed. We haven't moved anything from other elements into the land use element yet. We have moved some things out of the land use element into the conservation element. In terms of the flooding and all of that, we decided that would be more appropriate. All of that over in the conservation element because that deals with the critical areas and other things. We've also moved, we had a section dealing with energy efficiency. I think it ended up in the land use element because we didn't have a climate element section. But now I think it makes more sense to put it in over there. There will be overlap because obviously building code issues and everything else. And there are some land uses that benefit from exposure. So we'll be thinking about how that would work, but for the most part, we'll try to move that to the climate element. We have some things dealing with the economic development side of things that I think are, are okay, but they're not necessary in the land use element. But we can always point to the economic development plan. Same thing with the transportation plan. There were some policies here that, they're definitely good policies, but I don't think necessarily have to be in the land use element. Data collection for those kinds of things. We had a number of things suggested for deletion. And some of these are, already state goals, already stated in the Growth Management Act that I'm not sure if we necessarily need to restate. Because, this by itself speaks to a larger thing than just the city. This is essentially a county-wide policy, locate, the highest density uses in the city, not in the county, kind of thing. So, and inappropriate conversion of undeveloped land, really that's the, by designated urban growth areas to begin with, that's already taken care of. So we're not concerned about that because we're the area that was said that we're supposed to be getting the growth. Those kinds of things. So we please read through these, make sure that you either, you know, if you don't agree with it, or if you have a better idea, or, you know, why can't we even do it a different way? Definitely open to any discussion about that.
So for the things that are countywide policies, so, and that are, it's recommended for deletion, yeah. No, wait, where'd I go? Yeah, recommend. If people were, maybe, not that everybody goes pouring through the comp plan all the time, but, you know, if they remember them being there somehow, you know, would they have to go over to the county plan to find them, or where would they, how could the city, Tumwater, recognize that we're implementing that stuff? Here's how, without having to send people,
Yeah.
you know,
And
off-site.
There's a couple of things that we did in the 2016 draft. We basically brought in the appropriate countywide planning policies into each of the elements, like the land use,
Yeah.
those kinds of things, and sustainable Thurston. We did that. I'm not exactly sure on how to make those connections explicit, or if we have to.
Mhm.
So still working through that.
Okay. If there is an expectation that somehow Tumwater's policies implement something, I think, you know, we've got to deal with that.
Yeah, I mean, I think we deal with that. I think we definitely deal with that as part of the policies that we have now, because they go into the detail that you need. I'm hesitant just to restate county or
Yeah, I wouldn't want to do
state
that.
goals and saying, yeah, this is what we're gonna do.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense. But if there's something specific that Tumwater is doing and it's satisfying something.
What we may want to consider doing as part of the introduction to each of these policy sections is to explain what we're doing here. So when we're talking about the Growth Management Act set of policies, we sort of give a very short description of this is why we're dealing with this. It's
Yeah.
to make sure that we have those connections to state law and these larger goals that are within
Right.
the Growth Management Act.
And I would hope that it's not just, hey, we're clicking through these things to meet this bureaucratic goal
No.
over here, but hey, this is making our lives better.
Yeah.
That's an argument.
That's what I want to avoid too.
Yeah.
I just
Right.
want it to be usable, not just to check off everything in the
Yeah.
state checklist.
Eric, did you want to say something?
No, I'm trying to think of the current structure and how it's written, because these are just the policies that we have, but there is an introduction to each. But then at the same time, we're also wanting to condense and shorten it, for it to be, more readable for the community.
Mm-hmm.
So without making it super dense, you know, like that. So I'm just trying to think of, you know, like, there's options with appendices, there's also, we're gonna reformat it. We're looking at reformatting, so where is the best place to put the countywide, and all the other plans that we also adopt with this?
And
So
I-
that's just what I'm pondering right now is,
Well, and is there a way to make it easily searchable with technology to
Oh, yeah.
use control find and then have a, if you're looking for something, here's the methods of looking for it, and if you need help, like, come to the city hall and we'll assist you in finding what you're looking for, type of thing. Because, I mean, I use Control F for everything,
yeah.
and it's a much easier way than
Mm-hmm.
rolling through everything. And if I
Yeah.
had an appendice that said, here's the short to it, and then go here, and I think just educating on an easy searchable method.
Yeah, and we can
Might be-
also use symbolism and stuff too for each
Mhm.
policy or action that also is referencing, like a countywide planning policy, it could have like a little star next to it.
Mm-hmm.
And we can have a key at the beginning, and then, so there'll be like a star, a smile face,
Check the box on all the
like,
things that-
a little
I can see
triangle.
Brad's loving this.
No, my vision is going to the other things that I don't think I really want to.
But Commissioner Staff brings up an interesting point, because
Yeah.
the presumption, you know, for a lot of the existence of these kinds of things is that you're making a paper document. And, you know, I think we don't necessarily have to be tied to that any longer, and so things can have links.
It
Hyperlinking, yeah.
could potentially have links, but
Um,
it requires the staff to have the expertise and the time to design a good document that is usable. So I'm hesitant to commit
okay,
my
It's an
research.
option, it's a possibility.
It is definitely, it's a beautiful idea. I don't disagree with it, and I think it's an excellent idea. I'm just concerned about our ability
okay.
to do that with our resources.
Well, and I'm curious if out there are some advanced folks in certain municipalities or cities that have already done this, and there's some really good options that we can look at.
Yeah, I would be open to that if it's something we could do and maintain without too much.
Yeah, the maintaining, you're right, that's a good
The
point.
maintaining part is the part I'm also really concerned about. So, having to try to deal with documents that have been created and then trying to update those as you do, because you amend these every so often.
If the master file, and that master file is,
If the master file is in a program that nobody knows how to use. Little things like that.
Paper does have its uses for sure.
That's what we're trying to.
It's also a good argument for keeping it simple. So,
That was all that I had for tonight. Erica, did you have anything else in addition to what we talked about?
No. But, you know, the open house is tomorrow, if you guys
Yeah.
want to go, so.
7 o'clock, right here? 7 o'clock.
7 o'clock in the council chambers. Terry, did you have anything? You've been very quiet, which concerns me.
Well, I think once we get a little bit deeper into, the wording of these, I'd be interested in several of them. But they may not even be there by the time we get there, so. Seems early to nitpick.
He's saving his words for later.
I just want to make it clear, Terry has already submitted comments. I just want to, I don't want to put pressure on the rest of you, but Terry's.
Some of us are motivated by competition, so yeah. All right. And you said, Brad, that you would, help get us that, set of policies in the 11 by 14, or, yeah, the 8 by 14 format?
Give that to Elizabeth.
Oh, okay.
Terry, I will have an 11 by 17 for you on the counter for tomorrow. And anybody else who would like a hard copy at 11 by 17, let me know.
I'll take them too. I actually love working in that format.
Okay, do you want this one?
No, you
instead?
can take that.
Okay,
I'll swing by. I'll be here tomorrow.
okay, okay, yes, I appreciate it.
I'll definitely
All right, then.
have some copies.
The online open house is also pretty cool, just throwing that out there. I may or may not have been a part of that, so.
She's the one who put it all together, just to make that clear.
My first GIS project.
Oh,
So it's,
Yeah.
it's pretty good. It's not three-dimensional yet, we're getting.
No, I was just
Yeah, no.
checking my calendar for the,
Oh, okay. Okay.
Sure.
Video.
All right, then. Does that close down our conversation on item 8?
Yes.
All right. Looks like our next meeting is the 11th. Any preview? All right. I can go to my handy, I really do like these.
Brad, the suspense is killing
Oh,
me.
no, it's the land
Lands for
for,
public purpose?
and
Yes,
utilities.
we'll be talking about the lands for public
Very
purpose.
good.
We'll be leading the discussion.
Okay, okay.
We solved the mystery.
Way to go. I really do like these calendars, the meeting schedule for the year.
I apologize again, they're
Ever-changing.
changing.
Okay, so that was the 11th of June coming up. After that, it's, what's everybody's pleasure? More conversation?
I kind of do want to make a quick comment, sorry to keep dragging this on. I think it would be nice to, or something to consider for the formatting, is if we want more action items within our policies and goals, that way we can have like checklists and document the status, for the next update. Just looking at the kind of the chart we have now, I think that's something that's really cool that we could implement it. That was a requirement through FEMA for the hazard mitigation plan, we had to have some type of plan to document, you know, like what the status is, the lead department, the lead plan. So that is something to consider too.
Yeah, and we did something similar with the economic development plan, so I think we've got some good examples of stuff that I'd like to bring in.
Yeah.
One other quick thing, I may not know what's going on the 11th, but on the 25th, we're having a joint work session with the City Council on Development Code.
Okay.
And we're gonna get into the weeds on some of the changes with that. So the big question is, what's our approach to meeting these state standards and state requirements? What things do we need to be including in our code and so forth? So that will be the focus of the discussion. With the council, we'll have an hour to do that.
Will that be at an earlier time than usual?
Yes, I believe it'll be a.
Maybe like in council?
Yeah. And then our hope is we'll have most of the council in person for those meetings. And then on July 9th, we'll have the climate joint work session. So we'll have 2 in a row. We won't have 3 because we're still working on the economic development stuff, but.
We have name tags for you guys.
And we have name tags.
Oh, I forgot my name tag.
I forgot my name too, but I turned it in.
Correctly spelled,
Yeah.
yeah, for the most part.
I don't know if we need them for planning commission meetings, because we have our name tags
Yeah.
here.
Right.
But for like the joint meetings and stuff, I do think that would be nice, because the council has their name tags.
Yeah,
And
Okay.
you're holding ours.
yes.
Right.
Yes.
And then
They were holding on to it.
also, if any of the commissioners come to like an open house or anything, we'll have a name tag for you.
Yeah, good. All right, good, thanks for that, reminder. All right, any other conversation? Motions? Commissioner Tobias?
I would motion to adjourn.
All right,
I'll second that.
that was Commissioner Staff seconding. All in favor of adjourning tonight, please say aye. Great, any opposed? We all said unanimous, we're leaving.
So say we all.
All right. Thanks, everybody, our meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.